Hey, everybody. I'm Chris Metzler, one of the programmers here with SF DocFest. And as you probably heard, we're celebrating our 25th anniversary this year. For any of you that have attended the festival over the years, is that we have a love for kind of offbeat, quirky films and films that kind of pull back the curtain on really cool stories that you didn't know about. So we were lucky enough to run across this great documentary you just saw, Amazing Life Sea Monkeys. And just as serendipity might have, both of the directors, both Aaron and Mark, are here to join us and actually have roots in the Bay Area. So welcome back, guys.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you for having us. Very
Yeah.
excited to show the
Hi,
film.
everyone out there.
So maybe a good place to start is that, what was the impetus for this film in the sense that, I know a lot of people often wonder, like, how do documentary filmmakers come up with their ideas? And also, like, how do you know when to pull the trigger?
Mhm.
Aaron, I'll start.
Go for it.
Uh, so we actually read about Yolanda's battle against Big Time Toys and her effort to get the Sea Monkeys back. And we learned a little bit about her in the article that we read. And thematically, it was kind of our cup of tea between Aaron and myself in terms of there just seemed like a lot of layers and intrigue, and she was an empathetic person, and we wanted to just find out more. And the idea of finding out more is sort of central to this work and what makes you want to, go on a shoot and figure things out and make a film is because you don't know all the answers. And so this was one of those. So our first instinct was to try to get in touch with Yolanda. And that was a super long process to get to her. We did it circuitously through her, eventually got in touch with her lawyer. And apparently there were several filmmakers that were interested in talking to Yolanda after this article had come out. And we worked to get entree into her world. And I'll let Aaron tell that story.
Yeah, it really was after we finally got that phone number to where we could call Yolanda, really began this process of just phone conversations. I don't know, it was like every week when Yolanda was free, we would be calling her, and we knew that her time was very precious because she was living without water and electricity somewhere in the forests of Maryland while she's fighting this David and Goliath battle. But we were very thankful to be able to have access to her and to talk. And I guess it was really a process of kind of trust building. We kept on being there. We kept on showing up. And I think often in film business, people like, you get the story, you get the access, you didn't go on to another story. We just over time, um, just put in the time with Yolanda. She put in the time with us, and we really had a lot of trust. So we eventually got this invitation. The invitation came to come down to Maryland and to see Yolanda. And we showed up. Mark and I drove down 5 hours from New York City, and we show up, and all of a sudden we're before these like sea monkey wrought iron gates, which you saw in the film. And we called somebody, a handyman came over and they opened and invited us in, and we drove down, and we finally met Yolanda, and it was like entering. It was like entering this portal, I mean, around the property, there were barns and sheds filled with all the detritus of like, Harold and Yolanda's life. It was like a portal into another world, and in some ways into the past. But it was really meeting Yolanda. And even though we had gotten to know her over the phone, you know, just really meeting her in person, we got to see that everything that we felt about her, like, yes, this is an unusual situation she is. She's an eccentric person to fight this crazy battle, but we found someone with integrity and backbone, and unlike almost anybody else who would like really take this battle and not give up. And that's great for a documentary subject, and we were immediately drawn into Yolanda's story.
Yeah, it's really special and love the kind of layers that kind of exist. Do you think, you know, there's something you guys mentioned about the idea of like wanting to know more, that's that kind of drive to kind of take that leap of faith. Um,
Yeah.
what do you think the kind of biggest surprise that happened during the making of the film that you didn't expect?
Let's see. It's a good question. Um, I think that you're like you're one one is working on a couple of levels. Like for us, we were following the story, what's going to happen with Big Time. All along the way, we're learning about Yolanda through her own self, but also through the others around her. Found ourselves in all sorts of homes and situations we never expected, with people whose relationships with her were strong or meaningful in some way. And so you're constantly learning. But what I
Mm.
was thinking about when you asked the question was that we like you project forward towards like what is the story about, and you start thinking about themes while you're making it, and you're wondering like for example about Yolanda's complicated relationship with her husband who invented the sea monkeys, Harold. And it's it was pretty incredible to be around Yolanda, to realize that she's lived an entire life since her husband passed away, since 2003 or so, I think, um, where she's self-defined in such a strong, powerful way that wouldn't be no one else would be privy to. They'd only understand her conventionally through this marriage, maybe if they've read a bit about her. And we found what was amazing to me to witness was somebody who late in life could be coming into their own and proving
Mm.
their mettle. And that was just like, it felt like privilege of access. The power of like, we're all trying to become, I don't want to speak for you, Aaron, but I'm still trying to become my best self. And that was like, it felt real, like her strength of character and, the way she confronted her own like things, her own, I don't want to put words in her mouth, but regrets or feelings about the past was powerful. And when she decided to change her name and re-own Signorelli as her identity, like that felt like, wow, this is happening before us. You write stories and you think they could go in certain directions, but to watch real life um, intersect with story was just a really cool position to feel ourselves in.
Yeah. Yeah, I just concur with Mark on that. Going in, we it could be, is it the Harold story, the Yolanda story, both, and very over this period of time, and the way Mark so eloquently described it, it was just like it became really clear that Yolanda was the center of our story, and we would fold Harold's story into hers because her present day story was really the one that we wanted to tell, and to get at her and really make her our main character. Even though we had maybe some people along the way who were want to put money in and were like, "Oh, that's the more sensational story," but no, Yolanda was really the focus of the story, and so we went with our guts, and we think it turned out all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what makes it special. I know probably people in the audience are wondering, so like, what were your guys' relationship to sea monkeys growing up, in the sense of like, did you ever mail in and purchase them, or like like when did you first hear about sea monkeys, and like how did that kind of take or kind of like hook you as you kind of decide to go into the story?
I mean, I'll say that it's funny because we have gotten this question a few times, and I wish we could say that we were just the super geeks who, since we were little kids, wanted to make a documentary about sea monkeys. But I think we were, if I can speak for both of us, Mark, we were both comic book readers. We both were aware of that zone of imagination that was in the back of comic books, like everybody. I mean, we're just the worlds that we're at. You could have submarines, or you could, buy this aquarium full of pets that you could own and control. The X-ray specs, which Harold also created, really drew us in terms of imagination, but I don't think either of us actually ordered the sea monkeys themselves. That was not something we purchased, but I think it really got under, our subconscious. I think that sea monkeys as an iconic image is that thing, that was a zone of imagination and children's imagination, and that's why it's endured all these years. But so I think when Mark and I first heard about the story, we were drawn to like our childhood imaginations of those things rather than the actual experience of having ordered them, purchased them, have them show up, and help them grow. Yeah.
Yeah, and when Aaron and I were early on talking about this project and what was compelling to us, that was one piece of the puzzle. This like the graphics and the sort of comic book world that we were both into without being full on Sea Monkeys fans early on. And then we were interested in all the other textures, interested in the B movies and like what was Yolanda's experience of being in exploitation films. And then we were like thinking about, wow, what an incredible relationship there are between those and comic books and the femme fatale or the heroine in these, comic books. And there were all sorts of intersections in the sort of the Adventures of Cavalier and Clay mold, like that just felt like, wow, this is interesting. B movies and the comic books and what we present to the public on the surface and what it means underneath and
Mm.
what people want to see in the tank versus what's really there. And all those like meta levels had us wanting to go on a quest and figure out what it all meant and actually present a riddle to the audience. And so how do you do that? And how do we craft this riddle where an audience will be plumbing the depths for meaning themselves with us maybe as like sort of subtle guides, you know.
And at what point in the process does that happen? So is that something that like begins to take shape as you start editing and working with the footage? Or was that a theme that you kind of knew early on of like how you kind of approached filming?
I mean, I do think that we thought about a million things, including the themes that we're talking about now. And it's interesting that in the process of making the film, you've got to there is a learning process because like there's that eager beaver filmmaker who's interested in everything aspect, and the process isn't is to try to figure out a way to allow those things to reveal themselves and not for you to tell the audience all those things. And it's interesting how humbling the process is when you realize what you really need to do is tell the story in and allow the audience to connect the dots. And that's really like you'd think it's almost like you need your themes there in your mind, and then you just need to work and try to channel them without expressing them out loud. Maybe validating them at times in with your characters over the course of the narrative, but it's really an incredibly intense, layered process, and the edit. Aaron and I spent I think we spent a couple of years because it was over a long time that we made this, but we spent a couple of years in the edit.
Yeah. If I just add to that, that it does, as filmmakers, occasionally you come across a story which from the get-go seems to offer so much, opportunity to explore so many themes. Sometimes you'll go into what seems like a simple story. Mark and I both done this, like, oh, I'm going to run away with a mariachi band or a Mexican
Sure.
circus or whatever we've done. And then we found meaning. This one from the get-go kind of screamed there was a lot of
Uh-huh.
different layers to explore. And so we were, attracted to this, like an early metaphor for us was like there's this like American aquarium, and in it you can find all these different themes, whether it's corporate greed or the B movies or extremist politics or whatever, and that we could somehow kind of scratch below the surface and get at what's underneath the American psyche. So we were attracted to that. I think, Mark, the painful part for us was like there were so many things that we wanted to say in this story and so many
Yeah.
different tangents. I mean, Yachi, who's the secretary, she was in an internment camp in the 40s, a Japanese internment camp in California. And like that was a whole story. We began editing her story. We thought we'd fold that in. It seems like it's on theme. And there's so many things like that that we couldn't.
Yep.
Because as Mark was saying, you have to really hone down the story. You can't be heavy-handed with presenting audiences with too much, and just really narrowing it down. In some ways, it was that was the hardest thing in this film is really just focusing on the story and getting really clear about what our themes are and what we could and what we couldn't do.
And yet the hope is, right, Aaron, like that, like actually like in some Zen way, like the less you try to
Yeah.
do, some those things can emerge, and so you get out of the way of the
Yeah.
story, and then allow these things to start revealing themselves, and at least for the audience that wants to go there.
Agreed.
That's very cool. I have to say, just even through this conversation, you guys have made me want to go back and watch the movie again. So that's pretty awesome. As we wrap up, I always try to remind our audiences that we're lucky enough that filmmakers like you all share their films early in their life cycle with us, And
Yeah.
our job as, audience members at Film Festival is that for the films that resonate with us, that we go out there and kind of become the grassroots street team to, like basically say, hey, over a beer or backyard barbecue or online, hey, I saw this great documentary, check it out. Where can folks kind of either continue to follow the film's journey, but also your work as filmmakers?
Well, for one, we're just out of that. We premiered this at South by Southwest fairly recently, and we're starting our festival circuit. We do have an Instagram handle, which Mark maybe you'll remember, but I think it's
I'll look it up.
c.monkeys.film.
I'm looking
But if anybody didn't see Monkeys Film in Instagram, it'll show up. And so we're going to be listing, we're at your festival. If for those of you who loved it and live up in the Mendocino area, we're going to be at the Mendocino Film Festival. We're going to be in the DC area at DC Docs. And, we're really rolling out our festival circuit. And what's wonderful about festival circuits is that we get to share this with audiences. And we're working on distribution. But if you follow us, you will have links to our sites and also what's happening with the film. And please do.
Yeah, it's c.monkeys.film on Instagram. And yeah, this is really like, this is the beginning. And I'm so glad that we could be in the Bay Area to share it with folks at this stage, given how much we connect with that area of the world and spent our formative years and our formative career years. And then it's to be seen, like given the world, like how this film is going to play out and get out into the universe, but it's certainly a grassroots effort. So we appreciate the listeners and viewers here that are watching this Q&A and saw our movie, actually telling your friends about it, even if it's not yet available streaming or in theaters. Eventually it will be, and so that people know about it now will help later, when it is going to be coming out into the larger universe. So anyways, thank you, Chris, and thank you to the festival.
Yeah.
Awesome. Have a great week, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for watching. If you were watching this, you watched the film and you stayed through the end of the Q&A, and we really appreciate it. Okay.
Very cool.
All right,
Thanks.
take care.